Hey folks, it's Steven Rondina from WinGG here, and I am here to talk to you today about Elden Ring. Now if you're like me, you've been playing a whole lot of it over the last couple of weeks, but also if you're like me, you might have already beaten it. Given the fact that Elden Ring shares many similarities with past From Software titles, it might be tough to figure out the best way to approach their back catalog. Here are a few important tips Elden Ring players need to know before getting into Dark Souls, Sekiro, or Bloodborne. So our first important tip is that Dark Souls and Bloodborne do not have a jump button. This might sound weird, and even as a From Software veteran like myself, it's kinda weird going from Sekiro and Elden Ring all the way back to Bloodborne or Dark Souls, and then just not having an ability to jump on your own. Now, Soulsborne games do have jumping, but the platforming elements outside of Elden Ring are more so about accurately falling than actually jumping. The level design is changed to accommodate for this, with the games having fewer props to trip up players when they're rolling, and different ways of hiding secrets. The complete lack of a dedicated jump button will still be a hugely jarring experience for some players that are just starting their Soulsborne journey. The good news is that this isn't something that'll take a particularly long time to adjust to. Ultimately, the rolling and parrying are still there, and they work pretty much exactly the same as you'd expect from Elden Ring. But the lack of jumping does mean that you're going to have to really adjust your approach to enemies that rely heavily on large, horizontal sweeping attacks. Tip number 2 is that Dark Souls 3 is probably the best starting point for new Soulsborne players. While there's a long, contentious debate to be had about which Dark Souls game is the best, regardless of which one's the actual objective best, Dark Souls 3 is probably going to end up being the best one to start with if you're new to the series. This ultimately comes down to quality of life improvements that have come with the series over time. Dark Souls 1 doesn't offer fast traveling to every bonfire, and Bloodborne forces all fast traveling to move through the game's hub area, the Hunter's Dream. On top of that, neither game allows players to respec their characters, meaning they're stuck with the same one for an entire save. Dark Souls 2 actually solves these issues, but it's widely regarded as the weakest in the series from a gameplay perspective. Dark Souls 1, 3, and Bloodborne all have a very strong case to make for being the best Soulsborne game. The trouble is that from a UI and UX and quality of life perspective, Dark Souls 3 just offers the most modern experience, and if you're starting the series now in 2022, it's not really going to get much better than that. Before we get into our next tip, make sure you subscribe to WinGG, and feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions. Make sure to check out our website where we have lots of great gaming coverage, as well as in-depth esports coverage. Tip number 3, do not, under any circumstances, start your journey with Demon's Souls. Now this might actually sound kind of strange given the fact that Demon's Souls was actually the first Soulsborne game, being a classic of the PlayStation 3. The trouble is that this game, in a lot of ways, ends up being an even less modern experience than other Dark Souls games or Bloodborne. Though the PlayStation 5 remake is actually the most recent Soulsborne release, Elden Ring players shouldn't rush out to get Demon's Souls as their first entry into the series. Elden Ring is easier than Dark Souls in some ways and harder in other ways, most of which boils down to the level design and open world nature of the game. Demon's Souls is another matter entirely. Though the PlayStation 3 original is an absolute classic, it's generally unfriendly towards new players, and while this applies to almost every From Software game, Demon's Souls in particular has level design that sometimes feels a little bit trollish. Alongside enemies that are specifically made to shove players off cliffs or fall from the ceiling, there are also a lot of bottomless pits and other little traps around corners. Now both the PS3 and the PS5 version of Demon's Souls is worth playing at some point, and they are both absolute classics. But if you're just starting your Soulsborne experience, this one is going to really frustrate you in a way that the other games aren't going to. Tip number 4 is that Sekiro is its own game and it's not really part of the Soulsborne series. Sekiro, once again, much like Demon's Souls, is an absolute classic, but it's not the one you're going to want to start with if you're just pivoting off of Elden Ring. It's a great game, but it's really completely different from a gameplay perspective, even though there are some visible similarities between the two. While it was seemingly made in the same game engine as Elden Ring, Sekiro is a radically different experience to the point where players shouldn't look to it if they're craving something in the same vein as Elden Ring. Sekiro has tight, intense combat that is more akin to traditional action games, and it lacks the RPG elements of the Soulsborne series and Elden Ring. Players have fewer combat options available to them, and they have to rely on the same weapon for the entire game. There is still room for creativity, but it's not at all similar to what fans have to work with in other From Software games. Now the Sekiro experience is a great one, don't get me wrong on that, The game won 2019's Game of the Year for a very good reason. The thing is, if you're looking to scratch the itch specifically left by Elden Ring, you're going to end up being left disappointed. And those are our tips for any players looking to pivot from Elden Ring to other From Software games. Have a great day, and make sure you check out WinGG for all of our gaming coverage.